I grew up in Banmore, near Listowel in North Kerry, and traditional dance would always have been part of my life. It always just seemed to be there. It's always something I've always done. I would have been first introduced to it at home in Banmore. My mother used to dance, and she used to often teach us some steps. I remember doing the likes of the Patsy Haley around the kitchen with her. That's quite a while ago now. I suppose I was probably maybe 4, 5, 6 years of age. It began, my dancing I suppose began formally then when I started going to school. I went to the local national school, Drumclough National School, where once a week local dance master Jimmy Hickey would come to the school and teach us all. It was great fun. I really enjoyed it. But at the time, I suppose, I didn't realise how important it was and how lucky we were to have someone like Jimmy coming into our school teaching us this style of dance. At the age of 8, I auditioned to get into the training academy at Seán, and luckily enough I was accepted into it. Here I was taught music, singing, drama, and of course dance. But I still continued my training with Jimmy Hickey in Drumclough School at the same time. I was never really into the competitive side of Irish dancing. If I'm honest, it never really appealed to me, that whole side of it. And it was only really when I joined Seán as a professional performer that I really realised the importance of this North Kerry style. I would watch recordings of Jack Lyons and Paddy White and Phil Cahill for hours and hours and hours. And I got to love their style, the characters, their stories, everything about them. Being from North Kerry myself, I suppose I felt a connection with these dancers. And indeed that I had been taught by Jimmy Hickey, who was one of a line of great dance masters, and that great dance master tradition of North Kerry, and I was lucky to be a part of that. Of course, it didn't start with these recordings. They all had a common link, and that would have been Jeremiah Mulliner, or Munnix as he would have been known. Munnix came from a place in North Kerry called Gunsborough. He was the son of a blacksmith who had a forge at Gunsborough Cross. Munnix himself was taught by Ned Bat Welsh, who in turn was taught by Tom Moore, or Maureen as he was known, and Maureen was taught by O'Kerreen, or Kearns. And that's really as far back as anyone can trace it, but that takes us right back to the early 1700s. Of all the recordings I've studied, I suppose the one that has influenced me the most would be that of Jack Lyons. Jack was from Ballybunion in North Kerry, and he had learned from Munnix, and he had a huge amount of steps that he got directly from Munnix. In the recordings, he even talks about going back and learning steps in 1918, as he says, the year of the big flu. He had some beautiful jig steps. They were so intricate and they really captured the essence of the North Kerry style. And Jack was almost 80 when he was recorded, and at that stage he had to use chairs to support himself when he was dancing. And it's a beautiful image of this man of 80 years of age still dancing with that passion and that grace. I mean, it's something every younger dancer these days should see, because it's amazing to see it. Set dances are very much part of the tradition. These are particular steps that are danced to specific tunes like the Blackbird, Rodney's Glory, Jockey to the Fair, and St. Patrick's Day. The Blackbird is one of the best known set dances. When people know you're an Irish dancer, you're often asked, like, do you have the Blackbird? It's almost like if you have the Blackbird, you must be half decent at dancing. We have a famous Blackbird in Sheamsatira. It was created 30 years ago for the opening of our then new theatre. And we did a new production called Ding Dong Deadro, which told the story of Munnix. And this step was specifically created for that show. So earlier this year, we decided to do something with it to mark the occasion. Throughout this strange year, we've all had a little bit more time in our hands. And what I was able to do was to go back to my original dance teacher, Jimmy Hickey, and I recorded him. And I also learned some steps and some new steps off him. And it was so refreshing to be able to do this again. And I even learned a new Blackbird from him. Jimmy is steeped in the North Kerry dance style. He learned all his dancing from Liam Deneen, who himself was a pupil of Jerry Munnix.
I'd say I learned most of all Jerry's steps from Liam, because Liam had them all here, and Liam improved them as well. He did, and even take the Blackbird. The Blackbird. There are several Blackbirds out today, but the original Blackbird was the one Jerry taught Liam, and Liam taught it to me.
And that's the one you were teaching me.
That's the one I taught you.
Oh yeah.
That's the real. That's Jerry Munnix's Blackbird. That's the real one.
throughout my life, I've always reverted back to Munnocks and the North Kerry style, to the tapes and then the recordings. Everything I do seems to be influenced by him. And so when creating new material, I always revert back to that again. In 2016, we did a show called On 'Em, where it brought together 4 completely different styles of hard shoe dancing. We had Appalachian flatfoot, we had Ottawa Valley style from Canada, modern Irish, and of course the North Kerry style. And the show really explores what the similarities are and what the differences are between these 4 hard shoe styles. In another recent production on Gráinne, The Wind from the West, I worked with our musical director Tom Munnelly, where we worked together and we created a tune and a step, beat for beat. 2 of them worked hand in hand. And what developed out of it then was this major part within the show that really tied together the tradition of fiddle playing and the tradition of step dancing, where they both worked together. The dancer plays a game of immortality. He defies gravity and plays a mocking game with the ground, which is always pulling him down. And so it is that the dancer remains always in our minds between time and eternity.
Hello, I'm Gráinne Hambly and I'm delighted you can join me today at my home here in County Mayo for my contribution to the 2020 Visionaries series. And I'm going to be talking about the great collector of Irish music, Edward Bunting. Bunting was born in 1773 and he must have been very gifted as a child, because when he was just 11 years old he became the apprentice organist at St Anne's Church in Belfast. But the reason that he's so important for us is through his connection with the Belfast Harp Festival of 1792 and his later collections of music. Now, the Harp Festival that took place in 1792 was organised to try to preserve the old, wire-strung or early Irish harp tradition, which was dying out at the time. And the way that they were going to do this was to have Bunting come and write down the music that the harpers played at the festival. I'll tell you a bit more about that as I go along, but basically Bunting was a classically trained musician. As far as we know, he had no experience of the harp beforehand, but he became so kind of taken with it that he then spent a lot of his life travelling around collecting music from harpers and also fiddlers and pipers and singers. And he published 3 volumes of music called The Ancient Music of Ireland in 1796 or 7, 1809 and 1840. And these 3 collections provide a really important resource for us nowadays of information about the harpers, the type of music that they played, the ornamentation, the chords, all that type of thing. And so it's really valuable and also a fantastic source of tunes. So I'll tell you more about Bunting's influence on me as I go along, but first I'll just play a bit of a tune that he collected. This was a tune from his 1809 collection. It's called Loftus Jones and it's a composition of Toole Carolan, who in fact this is the 350th anniversary of Carolan's birth. And Bunting collected this from Charles Fanning, who was a harp player from Foxford in County Mayo. So I'll just play a bit of it just to give you an idea. This is Loftus Jones. And that's just one of many tunes by Carolan which appear in the Bunting collection. Now, I was trying to think back to when I first became interested in Bunting and this music, and I was thinking about when I went to university at Queen's University Belfast, which is actually where the manuscripts from Bunting's collection are still kept today. You can also see them actually online through a kind of this facsimile of the manuscripts there, which is very interesting. And I was thinking, I realised that already when I went there, I was already very interested in Bunting. And in fact, I did my master's there, and my main topic for my dissertation was the kind of political and historical background to Bunting's collections. and to the Belfast Harp Festival. And in fact, this book here, this is a copy of the 1840 edition, which my parents gave to me for my 21st birthday. And I remember at the time I was just so excited, and this was absolutely the most amazing present. Even though sometimes I tell this story to my students and I can just tell by their facial expressions that they mightn't be too impressed if they got a book like that for their birthday, but it was just so, I thought it was so amazing to have a kind of a piece of history, I suppose you could say. So already at that stage I was very interested, and I started to think back even further, and I realised that when I kind of first became fascinated with this music was actually in 1992, when I was a member of the Belfast Harp Orchestra. Now, this was a group of about 25 harpers organised by Janet Harbison, who was my teacher at the time, and she formed the orchestra to celebrate the bicentenary of the Belfast Harp Festival. And for this commemoration, we did a tour of Ireland, we went to France and Milwaukee Irish Fest. We also recorded and toured with the Chieftains, who were, they recorded a CD also in commemoration of Bunting and the Harp Festival called the Celtic Harp. And what was so kind of special about these performances, because it was commemorating the festival, a lot of the music came from the Bunting collection, and there were so many beautiful tunes that some of them I had never heard before, and others were like versions of well-known tunes, so it was a nice combination. But the first half of the concert was a sort of reenactment of the festival. So there were 10 harp players at the festival, one 15-year-old, one woman, one man in his 90s who was Dennis Hempson. He was the last harper to play in the really old style with the long fingernails on the wire strings. And he didn't play tunes by Carolyn because he thought that they were too modern. So the 10 harp players anyway at the festival, in the concert, 10 of members of the orchestra each represented one of the harp players and played a tune that they performed at the festival. And this kind of, I suppose, it captured my imagination to almost feel like you were back at the festival. And I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for the festival. I think it would have been just amazing to hear these harp players from all over the country playing their music for 3 days, and Bunting writing the music down, which was no easy task, I think, really. I wouldn't have liked that job myself, you know, but I suppose in our current situation, any of us would love to get to any sort of a festival, but that would have been, I think, a particularly special moment in history. So I suppose that captured my imagination and set me down the road to being really interested in the music. But the first time I began to kind of actively search through the collections myself, I suppose, was when I wanted to record my first CD, and I wanted to include some tunes from the Bunting collection. I knew lots of tunes through Janet, as I mentioned, and also Micheál O'Sullivan recorded a lot of melodies from the Bunting collection, and they were beautiful and inspirational versions. But I kind of wanted to find tunes that I hadn't heard before that I could sort of interpret myself and put my own stamp on. So I started to search through the collections, and one of the first tunes that I came across, which I really liked, and I still one of my favourites today, is a melody called Modgan Bog Even, which means soft, mild morning. And this is one that Bunting collected from Dennis Hempson, who I mentioned, and I think it's a beautiful melody. So I'll just play that one for you here, Soft, Mild Morning. about learning that tune, or in fact any tune from the collection, the first thing I usually do is play it on the piano. So apart from this book here, the whole collection is available in printed form. But Bunting often put things in kind of unusual keys that don't necessarily work on the harp. So usually I'd sort of sight read them through on the piano first. And generally I do play his left hand just out of curiosity more than anything else, because we know that the left hand in his publications was not what the harpers played. It was Bunting's own arrangements. But it's still kind of interesting to see what he came up with. But the main kind of, I suppose, the main thing I do is take the tune from the collection and then make my own version of it. Sometimes you have to make changes in the right hand as well, because Bunting would change the key of things sometimes. For example, he'd add, like in a minor tune, he would add this sharpened seventh, which is typically used in classical music, but not in Irish music. Usually you would have this scale. Irish music is modal. So you kind of can't really blame him. He was trying to appeal to a particular audience at the time. And as long as you know that that's not how it would have been played, you can kind of adapt the melody then to suit. Now, there are people who are reviving the early Irish harp tradition. For example, Siobhan Armstrong and the Historical Harp Society of Ireland. And people have done a lot of research on how the harp was played, and I absolutely love to hear tunes played on the early Irish harp and imagine that that might have been how they sounded to Bunting. But for me, I don't play the early Irish harp, so my main motivation when I'm searching through the collections is to find tunes that I can kind of bring to a modern audience and interpret them in my own way. So certainly the chords that I played in that tune are not what the wire harp would have played. Dennis Hempson would probably, certainly not have played those chords, but I just am trying to bring it to life in a new way, I suppose. And I think that has its place as well, even though it's not how the harpers would have played these tunes. I'm just reinterpreting them, I suppose you could say. Another element that really interests me is the fact there are tunes in the collection which are still played today on other instruments, but they've changed over the years. So I'll just play a little bit actually on the concertina of one of these. This is a tune called Molly McAlpin, and it was probably composed by William Connellan. There were two brothers from Sligo, Thomas and William, and they were alive in the 17th century. But the tune over the years has evolved into actually different versions, but the one I'm going to play is a hornpipe called Paul Halfpenny. The key changed, the rhythm changed, but it's still the same origin, and you can kind of notice by the shape of the melody. So I'll try it out, Molly McAlpin and Paul Halfpenny. So you can see now if you recognise any similarity or not there at all. So there's lots of tunes like that, the Blackbird, and lots of airs as well that are found in the collection and that are played in maybe a different version nowadays. Of course, they've changed over the course of 200 years. The other thing that's very interesting, I mentioned Bunting didn't just collect music at the Harp Festival, he also travelled around collecting tunes, and he visited Connacht on a couple of occasions. and visited County Mayo. And so a few years ago I was asked to do a concert in Philadelphia for, and the theme was the music of Mayo. And so I went back to the Bunting collection and went searching through for any tunes that might have a Mayo connection. And I came across one called Sunday Morning, which I had originally learned from Janet, I think, back in 1992. And it was also, I've heard Micheál O'Sullivan playing it as well. And I'd kind of forgotten about it in the meantime. But I went back and was very happy to rediscover it, and it's now one of my new favourites. And just in case you think that all of the music in the Bunting collection is slow or harp music, or, well, kind of slow pieces or airs, I'll finish up with the slide, which is a version of Is It the Priest You Want? And this tune is still played nowadays, a very lively slide. So I suppose before I finish up, I just want to say, like, basically, the music of Bunting, the influence it has had on me is something that I kind of carry with me. It's not the only thing that I play. I play lots of dance tunes, lots of slow airs, and I love all those elements of the harp tradition. But I think that the music of Bunting is a sort of special part of our repertoire, and wherever I do a concert, anywhere in the world or online or anywhere at all, I'll always talk about Bunting. Not as much as I'm talking now, but I talk a little bit about it and kind of try to explain a little bit about this tradition, because I think it's such a valuable source, not just of information, even though it's well worth it. You know, you can search out more information on this, but just also beautiful, beautiful tunes that are kind of, a lot of them are not ones that you would commonly hear. And the published collections are only kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more stuff in the manuscripts. I was very lucky a couple of years ago to be travelling around with a group from the USA. They were doing the harp tour of Ireland, and as part of the tour we visited the Bunting manuscripts in Queens. They put on a special display for us there, which was amazing, considering especially that I had been to university there, but I'd never actually seen the manuscript collections. And you can see where Bunting kind of wrote down the music just with the dots first of all, and then went back and kind of put in the rhythm and so on, and then eventually arranged it. Also the collections are there too, the notebooks of Patrick Lynch. So when Bunting was collecting the music, he was collecting the words and the lyrics, and unfortunately most of the pieces were never kind of joined back together, but hopefully that will be done at some point, because it would be lovely to find out the songs attached to many of these tunes as well. So I'll finish up with these two, Sunday Morning and Is It the Priest You Want? Hopefully I've given you a little taste of the influence and the kind of the scope of Edward Bunting and his collections of music, and maybe you can go out and find out some more about it afterwards. So thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Peter O'Toole, and I want to share with you my love and my life inspiration. That is the album Prosperous by Christy Moore. As a young man growing up, actually I was a young boy, I was probably about 12 or 13, I was beginning to discover music. I'd come from a Beatles kind of Kinks, Rory Gallagher background, and suddenly I started discovering traditional music, the likes of Clannad and Planxty. But I think it was the music shop in Gráinne that I went to first to obviously look at some instruments, but they also had a fantastic record collection. And I discovered Prosperous by Christy Moore. And Prosperous was the album that got the band Planxty together before they became Planxty. And it was full of amazing songs of importance. There were songs of love, but also songs of social injustice and songs of struggle, songs of beauty, songs of yearning. The sound of the album was what caught my attention. It was it was made in the basement of Downing's house in Prosperous, a big country house, and so therefore the sound had all kinds of quirks, I suppose. If you imagine recording in an old basement, there's natural echoes and reverbs in the hallways and in the rooms. My band Hot House Flowers were lucky enough to have spent some time in various different residential studios, and you discover amazing sounds in bathrooms or in living rooms or in hallways or underneath arches, and that's kind of what happened with this record. But what also happened was the interplay between the musicians. You can already hear Donal and Andy playing together with bouzouki and mandolin and Andy's harmonica. The songs by Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan, and you can hear all those influences. At that time I think Christy was hanging out in England a lot, playing folk clubs, so you can hear that. His voice is kind of full of staccato, it's da 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 da, and it's amazing. When I was young I worked as a van boy for Johnson Mooney and O'Brien Bread Company, and I got posted down on the Kildare truck, which was the largest truck in Johnson Mooney at the time. It was an articulated truck that serviced all around the County Kildare area. So suddenly I was driving around Prosperous and Robertstown and Naas and the Curragh, and for me my mind was blown, because I had all this feeling inside of me with sound, attached through song, and suddenly I was driving around the roads of the country roads of Kildare, and I felt like I was actually part of the song. I felt like I was in the song. As I drove, I was imagining the melodies of these tunes, these songs, and Prosperous kind of woke up that feeling of romance or that feeling of being attached to somewhere. I always had a love of forestries and wanting to walk around forests, and felt, playing music in a forest was an amazing thing. So that all kind of went with it. Being in Kildare and being a young boy loving this music and loving this album. So here it is, a mini version of the Prosperous album. You can tell that they're having great crack. Like, I mean, they're sitting outside the front of the house on an armchair. There's an old gramophone player, and they're all smiling, and there's a great sort of, Christy's just kind of slouched in an armchair, and you can know they're having a great time, and you can hear that in the record. And an amazing collection of songs. Clive Collins, Dave Bland, Kevin Cuniff as well. Kevin came in at the end, and Christy was saying that if he had to come in at the beginning, the baritone would have been everywhere, all over the album, but it was just, he just came in at the end, so it was only on one song. So it was a great record to play along with as well. And as I said, Christy's voice is so young and full of staccato and full of attack, and the content of the songs was just amazing, you know. So I'm going to move over to the warmth of the house and play you a few tunes from this amazing album, Prosperous, by Christy Moore. I grew up in a small terraced house in a place called Bushfield Terrace in Donnybrook. It was a cul-de-sac and it was a beautiful, safe street. Lots of families, lots of young children, with lots of friends growing up. And I suppose not all houses, but some houses would have had the front room, which was the sitting room, or the sitting room really. The sitting room was out of bounds for everybody in the family. It was held only for visitors. So it was always kept beautiful. The fire grate was always empty and clean. Everything was polished and hoovered. Dust never entered. Children never entered. And beautiful curtains, wallpaper. Some people even went to put plastic covers over their furniture and maybe on the floor, but we didn't go anywhere near that far. So anyway, there was 8 of us in the house and it was pretty tight. So my parents decided to allow the children of the family use of the front room, the sitting room. And it had a beautiful piece of furniture, which was a turntable and a radio. So coming from a background of listening to the Beatles and the Kinks, Cat Stevens, some Rory Gallagher, when Prosperous came along, I just played it and played it and played it and played it and played it. And I would sit down and I would read the notes on this album over and over and over and over and over and over again. I knew every move that was coming. I knew every note of the album. I would play along with whatever instrument I had. And I kind of saw myself in that band. There was these fine musicians and me. Or there was me and these fine musicians, whichever way you want to look at it. I did that with a few records actually. I was convinced I was in the band and I would play along. And it was a brilliant way to learn music. So Prosperous, as I said, came along and I just played it and played it. There was 2 famous songs from it, which was The Raggle Taggle Gypsy and The Cliffs of Dooneen. And both of those I was familiar with before I had the album. And The Cliffs of Dooneen was on a record that we had in our car. It was a big cassette player. And it was on Feast of Irish Folk. So I was familiar with that tune, and when it came along on Prosperous, I just played the album. I played it over and over again. So. I'd like to give a special thank you to the amazing piping and whistling of the genius and the master that is Liam O'Flynn, who played beautifully on this record. You had such very fine musicians playing, and it was hard not to be excited and not to be inspired by the playing on this record. There was 4 big hits on the album as well. You had Spancel Hill, you had the Raggle Taggle Gypsy, you had you had the Cliffs of Dooneen, James Connolly as well. So they're 4 huge songs. This album was kind of so much reminded me of a Beatles album, where you had the kind of the yin and yang. You had the really powerful social songs, social comment songs, and then you also had the really powerful songs from the heart and from yearning. So this is one that Christy actually wrote. It's called I Wish I Was in England.
Oh, I wish I was in England, in France or even in Spain, or wherever dwell my own true love to hold her near again, or wherever dwell my own true love to hold her near again. Oh, long time I've been roaming in country and in town, but never in my wandering need the maid with such renown, but never in my wandering need the maid with such renown. Until I met my true love on the shores of Loch Ness Street, a brown hair in the howling wind, blowing wild and free, a brown hair in the howling wind, blowing wild and free. Oh, my true love, she did promise land with Hambly kind, and on her apple pasture land to build a mansion fine. Oh, and on her apple pasture land to build a mansion fine. And then my true love left me, she wandered far away, and I've been searching for my love for many's a night and day, and I've been searching for my love for many's a night and day. Oh, I wish I was in England, in France or even in Spain, or wherever dwell my own true love to hold her near again, or wherever dwell my own true love to hold her near again.
So, Prosperous, Christy Moore and Friends, an amazing album.
Oh, I wish I was in England, in France or even in Spain, or wherever dwell my own true love to hold her near again, or wherever dwell
Good evening, folks. My name's Seán McKeon, and I'm here in my living room in North Dublin. Welcome, unfortunately, to lockdown 2.0, which we unfortunately find ourselves in at the moment. Tonight, I'm going to just play a few tunes and give you a bit of a snapshot into a musician who has really influenced my music, and that's Seamus Ennis, the great piper who was only from down the road here in Jamestown in Finglas. So that first tune I played for you there was a composition of Seamus's father, James Ennis, and it was called The Morning Thrush. And I think James composed that around 1913 or 1914, and Seamus says that he found a manuscript for that tune at home in his house, and he learned the tune, and to the great delight of his father. And I think around that time James entered it into a Feis Ceol competition, entered the tune in, and it won. So lovely piece of music that. So yeah, as I said, Seamus Ennis has really influenced my own music, and I really got into his playing around 1997, 1998, when I was about 12 years old. I got a copy of the Return from Fingal album, and the next few tunes I'm going to play, the first couple, I remember learning around when I was around that age, around 12 or 13, and there are a couple of hornpipes. The first one is The Pleasures of Hope, and the second one is The Standing Abbey. And then I'm going to play a third hornpipe as well that I learned from Ennis, and I got that one from a private recording made in Milltown, Malbay in 1967, and the last one is called The Thomond Bridge. So these are three more from Seamus's repertoire. So Ennis didn't only make such a great contribution to our tradition as a musician and a piper, obviously, but also he spent much of his life collecting music and song all around the country, and he began collecting, I believe, for the Folklore Commission in 1942, at the age of 23. And I wanted to play one of his tunes that he collected while out on his travels, and this one he got from a man called McKeon, a man from Connemara. And I think he actually ended up collecting over 200 pieces from McKeon. And this tune he originally had down as the Tipsy Miller, and I think Ennis changed that name to the Dusty Miller, believing that it was Cullum's lack of grasp on the English language, as Irish was his first language, that he had the incorrect title on it. So I suppose I just wanted to play this because it is an example of the fact that not only was Ennis a master musician, but also he was a source of huge repertoire, and still is for all our musicians today. He travelled the length and breadth of Ireland and over to Scotland, working for, as I said, the Folklore Commission, the BBC and RTE, and brought back many great tunes to us. So this is just one of them, the Dusty Miller, and I'm going to play a version of the Rocky Road to Dublin before it. And the Rocky Road to Dublin, this version again obviously is Ennis's version that I learned from his recording the Pure Drop. So get my breath back after those. So I'm going to finish up now with a few reels, and I suppose the last thing I wanted to mention about talking about Ennis and his influence in my own playing was just that he he had such a mastery of such a difficult instrument, and he had all the ornamentation and he had all the technique, and but he always had a wonderful rhythm, and I always noticed such a mix of all these things when he was playing his reels. So I'm going to finish off with 3 of his favourites. The first one is one that he called the Pure Drop, or Hand Me Down the Tackle. The second one is a version, actually, I've only ever heard him play it, is of the Pinch of Snuff with an extra part in it. And the last one then is the Braes of Busby. So thanks very much for listening to this little snapshot of the influence Seamus Annet's had on my own music. I hope everybody's keeping well out there and just provided a little bit of respite in these tough times, and I hope to see many of you soon for a few tunes and a bit of crack again. So all the best. very much. Stop.
He started as an amateur, like many others, and learned by his own experience. He got, as far as I know, received no tuition, and everyone has been very struck by what he's been able to do, and that applies to the quantity of recording that he's done, and equally to its quality. He's collected the most remarkable things.
All the pretty young boy from the North Strand come.
Tom Munnelly was a song collector from Dublin who recorded over 20,000 songs in his career. So for me, as someone who's just getting deeper into traditional singing now, he's left an incredible body of work there to dig into and to learn from.
And there he would marry me.
I suppose the middle of a pandemic is a strange time to get into traditional singing because it's not like you can just stroll into a session now and hear other singers. So in that sense, Tom's recordings and other archive materials have been a great learning resource, and I'm lucky to have access to them and then the online singing sessions to sort of keep me going.
Where they are 33.
I suppose I discovered Tom's work because I had been looking into the Seán song project, which is on the Traditional Music Archive website, and a few of the recordings I found when I was going through the archives, were related to him. And then I actually found also a recording of him singing. So, he wasn't just somebody who was going around recording people singing. He was also participating in sessions and very kind of involved that way.
It was on one sultry summer's day, when tired of working and the hay, I lay and watched a regiment marching by to foreign wars. And I don't know how it came.
We were definitely hippies, like a big bushy beard, and a duffel coat and sandals, Yeah, we were very avant-garde, ultra trendy, Tom is my brother-in-law. My sister is married to Tom, and Tom and I both met in O'Donoghue's around 1963. We were both had been bitten by the ballad boom bug, if you know what I mean. During the ballad boom, which started in the late 50s.
But I came to traditional song by way of unknowing it, as a hell of a lot of people did. Also the actual enjoyment of singing.
We were all looking for something to sing, like something to expand our repertoires. And at that time, that with Tommy, then we went round to the Fleadh na Ceoil, and then we started hitching around. We'd no cars, of course. We hitched around.
So I suppose there's something in his approach that resonates with me as someone who's, a filmmaker, kind of interested in documenting sessions, but having at some point realised that I had to also be participating in them to successfully document it. It's like you can't just sort of be a fly on the wall. And just about to jump on a call with the Seán Singer Circle, a lot of the process you're sort of on your own, researching, looking up lyrics, trying to learn the songs. So at the end of all that, it's nice then to be able to bring it back into a group. That's where the songs live, really.
It was a verse of it anyway, just to get us going anyway.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, a pretty young boy come from the North Strand. He come a-wooing to me, and he promised he'd take me down by the North Strand, and there he'd marry me. Oh, get some of your mammy's feet, more of your daddy's gold, and 2 of the best horses that stir in his stable where they're 33. Oh, she got some of her mammy's feet, more of her daddy's gold, and 2 of the the best horses he had in his stable were there 33. Oh, she got up on a milk-white steed, and he on a dapple grey, and they rode along.
Coming from a filmmaking background, the ballads are particularly interesting because they're just very concise narratives and a sort of foundation of storytelling culture.
You ask yourself, like, why do people like Eddie Butcher or Sarah Macon, John Riley and many, many other travellers have so many ballads in their repertoire? And the answer is actually very simple. Because they enjoyed a good story.
I think Tom was someone who appreciated the dramatic value of these songs, but also their role within the culture as entertainment.
Your silks and your satins, you must take them off. Deliver them upon to me, for I think they're too rich and too grand, says he, to roll in the bright rocky waves. If my silks and my satins, I must take them off. Please turn your back to me, for I think you're too big of a ruffian, says she, to see a naked woman like me. And he turned his back on the for the North Strand to watch the waves going by, and she grabbed him around the middle so high and flung him right into the deep.
We were talking about Along the North Strand there.
Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight.
So in the version that I learned, which was Jim Cassidy's version, he actually doesn't complete the story. So he finishes actually before the woman even outsmarts your man.
Before she outsmarts him and throws your man into the water.
Yeah.
Okay.
It cuts
and
off.
Nothing about the parrot. The parrot's not in his one either.
No.
He only has a fragment of it, then it's a fragment.
So I wondered if that was a case where the tape cut off or something, or he just maybe finished the song there.
That's all he had. No, if he had the whole song, Tommy would have recorded it from him.
Yeah.
No, he didn't have it. And this is a thing that, as a folk song collector, you will come across all the time. People have fragments. They will have 2 or 3 verses, and you still record that for the mere fact to show that the song was extant at some stage in that area.
And I came to my true love's window to hear her mournful pain. She rose up gently from her nap to let her true lover in. I wouldn't wish it.
So I've been reading a few articles that Tom wrote. I think one of the things I like about his approach to song collecting is that he doesn't really discount anything. He collects everything that he can, and it's not really his job to filter it or sort of impose his idea of what's good or bad or what's moral or immoral. Tom wrote this article about George Petrie called George Petrie Distorting the Voice of the People. And the criticism is that Petrie sort of, as a Victorian gentleman of good standing, that he was imposing his own sense of morality on the songs and deciding what was moral or not. In an age which put coverings on piano legs lest they excite or upset the viewer, Petrie did it with song texts. Let me cite some examples. Petrie regrets even having to use the name of the Tender Night Visit song Blow the Candle Out. The fact that he concedes that it had a very extensive popularity in the Munster counties and was sung there since the 18th century counted for nil, and he refused to print the words. So the criticism there is that Petrie is omitting entire song texts from his collection because he has a sort of moral objection, or he thinks, nice Victorian society people will be offended. So I kind of appreciate that Tom's approach is to not really pass any judgment on the songs. So this is the offending verse from Blow the Candle Out.
And come all ye pretty fair maids, a warning take by me. Never let those false young men an inch above your knee, for they'll kiss you and they'll court you until your time be out. They shall leave you where my love left me, when he blew the candle out. Another song I'm going to do is Well Below the Valley, which is also referred to as The Maid and the Palmer, which is one of the child ballads.
There was an early recording, I think from 1965, of John Riley.
That's the one you want, yeah.
So he doesn't have, there's the verses about the children.
Yeah.
He doesn't have in that.
You are missing a verse, I just realised.
Am I?
Says me of your swearing wrong for 6 fine children you had born at the well below. Is that not in the John Riley version?
No. Okay, so John Riley's version is apparently missing 2 verses, which I didn't realise. For a gentleman he was passing by, he asked a drink as he got dry at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. The reason I picked that song is because I suppose it's a significant recording in Tom's catalogue, because at that point in time the song hadn't been heard in the oral tradition for 150 years, so it was kind of a revelation to then find it in the west of Ireland.
I could not emphasise more how significant a singer John Riley was. We were at a Flackall in Boyle. I can't remember what year it was. Tommy said, I'm going for a bit of a ramble around the town to see if there's anything else. So he went and he walked down, and about, it might have been a half an hour or 45 minutes, he came back and he said to me, there's a great old singer down the town. He said we should. So we both went down, and this old man, as I thought, with a cap and a coat, and he sang, and he was a very, very great songs, and that was John Riley. Of course, Tommy was very, very keen once he'd heard him,
John's whole life was song. On the night that we recorded him, he sang us 42 songs. Because that's unusual for a man. That was very ill.
The classic sort of thing that every folk song collector has been, you're in competition with the Undertaker all the time. Yeah, and he was very aware of that, and he would be very, very keen, particularly if he come across with somebody with songs and he thought that they weren't too well, he would be very keen to try and get those songs and record them before they passed away,
A man of the noble fame, you'll tell to me who's the father of them at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. 2 of them came by your Uncle Dan, another one by your brother John at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. Well, if you're a man of the noble esteem, you'll tell me then what'll happen myself at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. You'll be 7 years a ringing a bell, and 7 years a porting in hell at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh. I'll be 7 years a ringing a bell, but the Lord above may save my soul from porting in hell at the well below the valley, oh. Green grows the lily, oh, right among the bushes, oh.
It was a great man to get people to sing. I remember arriving down in Jimmy Houghton's down on the Isle of Doe one morning at about 11 o'clock, You know, at 11 o'clock in the morning, how do you sing? You know, and the next thing, Tom produced a bottle of whiskey. By 12 o'clock, things were flying. So they were, you know, he just knew what was needed for the occasion.
He went to record one song up in the door, and whatever happened anyway, he got the recording done. So it left him with time in his hands, and we were singing then to, it must have been well after 3, and Tom started putting away his equipment, and Corny, I was sitting beside Corny McDade. Corny says to me, "What's your man doing?" I says, "I don't know, he's clearing up." So what am I doing? I says, "Tom, Corny wants to know, what are you doing?" He says, "Because we haven't even started yet. This is after about 8 hours singing." Tom says, "I've run out of tape."
This was a song that Tom sang, which is funny because there doesn't seem to be much evidence for him singing other than the few recordings on the Inishowen side, really. So I learned this from the John Riley recordings, Once They Lived the Captain. Once there lived a captain. He was born out for sea, and before that he was married, he was sent far away. And when that he returned, to her father he did go. "Is your daughter inside, sir? Can I see her once more?" "Oh, my daughter is not here, sir. She left us here last night. She's gone to some nunnery," was the old man's reply. He went on to the nunnery and knocked all at the door. Out come the Reverend Mother, and she tearing galore. "Oh, your true love is not here, sir. She left us here last night. She's gone to some asylum where she's fractured in mind." I think Tom Munnelly is definitely somebody worthy of the title of visionary, in that, you know, takes vision to see the value in something that's in front of you and imagine a time when it might not be around anymore. And I think when it comes to songs and singers, Tom saw the value in making those recordings, and I think he must have had some sense of how important they would be for people in the future, and for people like me to be able to come along and keep learning from the tradition and keep learning directly from the source singers. He stood by her left side, and his sharp sword he drew, and he stood to great attention, and he pierced his heart through. Sad was the parting, and hard it was the dooms, to see two loyal lovers lying dead on the floor. When green grows the laurel, and soft it falls the dew, saying, "Sorry am I, true lover, forever parting from you."
It's a cheery wee number, isn't it? Yes.